go. All right, so I want to welcome everybody in the room and online to iLearn Review Live. And we got my friend who's sitting right here, right off camera. What's your name? I forgot your name. What's your name?
Jerry.
We got Jerry. And Jerry asked me a question last night before we started the class. Jerry said, why is it every time I open an app for the first time it says, this app wants to track your location. Can it track your location? Now, there are hundreds of different reasons. Now, take, for example, have any of you ever used Uber before? If you've used Uber, I'm going to tell you something that's going to really hurt people's minds. The first time I used Uber was last year. That was the first time I ever used Uber. Now, Uber's been out for like 6 years all over the world. The first time I ever used Uber was last year. Really great secret to Uber. If you're ever in St. Petersburg, Russia, Uber is super cheap. It's next to nothing. It's from the ship to the center of town is like $1.50. Like from the ship to the Hermitage is $1.50, and a taxi will charge you $40. From the ship to the Hermitage is $1.50. It's great. But what I was going to talk about is all kinds of apps will use your location for different reasons. So if you have an iPhone, I want you to go ahead and follow along today, because I want to show you which apps have used what's going on. So we're going to go into settings. I'm going to turn my phone sideways. We're going to go into settings, and you're going to scroll down to where it says privacy. So settings and privacy. And there's a whole bunch of different privacy things here, but what I care about right now is something called location services. Do you see that there right on the top? Settings, privacy, and location services. And I would assume that most of us have location services on because nothing works if you don't have location services on. So we've got our location services, and here are all the things using my location services. I'm going to point out a couple of them, and you'd be like, okay, that makes sense. I have an app called Altimeter. It obviously needs to know my location to know how high I am. I have an app called Auto Sleep that tracks my sleep, but for some reason it wants to know my location because it needs to know when I'm home, it needs to know when I'm sleeping. Some of these will make sense. You've got Best Buy. We all know the store Best Buy, or we should have heard of the store Best Buy. Why does Best Buy need your location? Thoughts?
To tell you whether the store is open.
Number one, to tell you whether the store's open, but when you look on Best Buy, when you look on the Best Buy app, it's going to tell you if it's in stock in nearby stores. If it can't tell your location, it can't tell where you are, it can't tell you if it's in stock in a nearby store. But then there's some applications that you're just like, why? I'll give you an example. Any of you ever watch Food Network? Watch the TV channel, the Food Network? There's a guy, famous chef, his name is Bobby Flay. You might have heard of him before. He has his own burger place, which is called Bobby's Burger Palace. There's like 4 of them in the country, and I signed up for the rewards program, so you know when you go in, they can check your rewards. You'll see that Bobby's Burger Palace has access to always get my location. Why do I need Bobby's Burger Palace to always have my location? So here's what's cool. When you're looking through it, you can actually turn them off. So apps will try and get an always. So if you say, can it use your location, it'll go always. You see the camera right there? This is the physical camera on the device. While using my camera app, it will allow me to see the location. All of these apps, CNN. I don't really understand why CNN needs to see my location, but CNN can see my location. All of these. So the first time you open up now, Dark Sky, which is something we talked about earlier in the cruise, which is a weather app. It needs to know where you are to find out where you are. But when you scroll through some of these things, you're going to be like, why does this need my location? I'm looking at some of these, and I'm just like, hooch. And there's all these online dating apps and things that are here. Google Photos app. I'll give you an example of one. The Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus asked for my location. And when it asked for my location, I said, no, you can't have my location. But you think I have about 300 apps on my device? And these are all apps that are using my location. And there's 3 different options. There's always, never, and while using. The correct answer most of your apps should be in is while using. If apps are set to always, not only are they able to track your location when you're not using them, but they can also just do whatever they want. They can track your location while you're not using them. I didn't think there was another answer for that. Even Walmart, you see, while using. So something that you need to have set to always would be something like Google Maps. If you've got Google Maps, it needs to be set to always, because even when you've got it closed, it's got to get your location to figure out your GPS directions. Does that make sense there? So what happened was, there was a big buzz online a bit ago that the Uber app, which I think I have here, the Uber app, do you notice what Uber has? If I click into Uber, see Uber right here on my screen? If I click Uber, I have not 3 choices, I have 2 choices. It's either never or always. If you don't let Uber always access your location, even when you're not using the app, can you use Uber?
I have three on here
You have what?
for you, but
You have 3, because you don't have the latest version of Uber. In the newer version of Uber, they've blocked it that you can only do those 2 things, never and always. And if you don't let them always track your location, you can't use the app. Now, I only use Uber where Lyft is not available. So like Russia, I use Uber and stuff like that to give you an idea. But I want to show you something really, really cool. Scroll down to the bottom of your apps. This is something that's going to scare you a little bit.
What are we going into?
So you should be in Location Services.
Yeah.
And where it says System Services on the bottom, scroll all the way to the bottom, and it'll say System Services. And then you will see something that says, you scroll down a little bit more, Frequent Locations. This is going to scare you a little bit. I promise probably none of you have ever seen this before. So System Services, Frequent Locations, and here's the interesting thing. This is going to show you where you frequently are. So have we clicked on Frequent Locations? Are you seeing things?
mine is in the office.
Mine is censored off.
No. Frequent. She's got it on.
Should I turn it on?
Well, that's a personal preference. So here's the interesting thing. You'll see that it knows where I've connected before, and it tracks my usage over time. And other apps that have set to always can also see my frequent locations. So if you have it on off, that's probably the better option. I have it on because I already know that people are tracking me. I've understood that fact. But you can see, I can actually see how accurate. There's 10 different locations in Aruba that I visited. I've had 9 different visits. In Palm Beach, Aruba, which is where the hotels and resorts are in Aruba, I've had 1 visit recorded, and I can actually look all the places I've been. Miami, Florida, I'm not going to, actually I can open this one. That's fine, North American Way. So this is, I don't know where that is. Oh, that's where the ship docks. It's like Miami, Florida, North American Way. I'm not going to open up home, but I can go in and I can see all these things. I went to St. Bart's in Gustavia, St. Bart's. I went there, on February 16th, according to here, and I can see exactly where I connected and exactly where I was. So not only do apps track your location, but Apple tracks your location as well, which is interesting. And they use it to add, if you notice that if you ever looked at the weather application that comes on the phone, different places will show up for weather. I can't spell weather. Different places will show up for weather that you've been. I never typed in Aruba. I learned Aruba because that was one of my frequent locations. So Aruba is one of my frequent locations. Tallinn, Estonia was one of my frequent locations that I like to go to all the time. And I can go through. So the simple thing is, what I want to make sure we understand is you should go in and you should look at which apps have access to see your location. And if an app does not give you the option to only do location while using the app, the answer is probably
Never.
never. But the trouble is, then guess what? Are you going to be able to use the app?
Exactly.
Uber got themselves in a lot of hot water. If you update your Uber app, you're probably going to have the option that's going to say either always or never. You're not going to have while using the app. Just to give you a little idea, and Uber got themselves in a little bit of hot water. I was talking about this the other day, but they were tracking, well, they are still tracking you for 10 minutes after you leave the Uber car. They're tracking you to see where you go after you leave the Uber to make their, they say, to make their services better and make their pickup and drop-off locations better, but you never know. So it's really cool. It's called Location Services, and I just want you to know the next time that pops up when you open an app, exactly what you're giving it permission to do. Does that make sense? And one thing I'm going to show you, one last thing I'm going to show you, and then I'll take a couple questions, is do you see these little icons here? So this is actually, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of your location services, you'll probably notice that sometimes you get a little icon right there up in the corner. And that's showing that some app is using your location right then and there. So some app, whether it's Uber, whether it's Facebook, whether it's anything like that, is using your location. A purple location services icon will appear next to an app that's recently used your location. So for fun, there's an application called Tunity that for some reason recently used my location. Shopkick recently used my location. Google Play Music, Quick Thoughts. All of these have recently used my location, and they will show you all of the different places that have recently used your location. So that is called location services. It does exist on Android as well. The big problem with it on Android, though, is it's called something different in Samsung Android and Google Android and HTC Android and everything like that. And I'm going to tell you something that's the honest truth. Do you know what happens if you turn off location services in Android? Phone doesn't start. The entire purpose of location services on Android is so Google can advertise to you. That's the entire purpose of location services. So it used to be if you tried to turn off cellular data on an Android phone, it just said, might as well not even turn on the phone. But Google's given out on that a little bit. But if you turn off location services on an Android phone, you can't do anything. That phone is a paperweight. Yeah?
Is it also connected to your Apple ID?
It is not synced to the cloud. The locations are independent of the device. So that's why it's not showing me locations from my old iPhone. You ask a good question. The only thing that really syncs to the Apple ID are stuff in the iCloud, which we're going to cover tomorrow in the iCloud class at 12:30 to give you a little idea. That was a little look at location services. This is iLearn Review Live. Bye!